What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors sits down for what should be a routine promotional interview, only to find himself facing off against a host determined to turn the conversation into a political battlefield? The tension in Studio 6 Amperes was palpable as Gary Oldman settled into his chair across from the panel of The View, expecting to discuss his latest film project. What unfolded instead was a verbal sparring match that would leave audiences stunned and producers scrambling. Before we dive into this incredible clash, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us what you think about celebrities mixing entertainment with politics. Now, let's get into what really happened when Gary Oldman met his match in Joy Behar. The morning started innocently enough. Gary Oldman, looking distinguished in his charcoal suit, walked onto the set with his characteristic humble smile. He waved to the audience, shook hands with the co-hosts, and took his seat. The producers had briefed him that this would be a light conversation about his upcoming thriller, a psychological drama where he plays a retired detective drawn back into a decades-old cold case. Welcome back to The View, everyone. I'm thrilled to have Oscar winner Gary Oldman with us today. Joy Behar began, her voice carrying that familiar New York accent that had become her trademark. Gary, thanks for being here. Thank you for having me, Joy. It's a pleasure to be here. Oldman replied, adjusting his microphone with the practiced ease of someone who had done countless interviews. So tell us about this new film. Another detective role for you, Joy continued. But there was something in her tone that suggested she wasn't planning to stay on topic for long. Well, it's quite different, actually. This character, Detective Morrison, he's been haunted by this one case his entire career. A young woman disappeared 30 years ago, and new evidence surfaces that brings him out of retirement. It's really about redemption, about facing the ghosts of our past, Oldman explained, his passion for the craft evident in his voice. Speaking of ghosts from the past, Joy interjected, leaning forward with that mischievous glint in her eye that regular viewers knew all too well. I have to ask about some of your past comments regarding certain political figures. You've been quite vocal about your conservative views. The studio fell silent. Even the audience seemed to sense the shift in atmosphere. Oldman's smile faltered slightly, but he maintained his composure. Joy, I thought we were here to talk about the film. We are. Joy waved dismissively, but our viewers are interested in the whole person, not just the actor. You've made some pretty strong statements about liberal Hollywood, haven't you? Sunny Hostin shifted uncomfortably in her seat, clearly sensing where this was heading. Whoopi Goldberg, who was moderating, seemed torn between letting Joy pursue her line of questioning and steering the conversation back to safer ground. I've always believed that artists should be free to express their views, Oldman said carefully, just as talk show hosts should be free to express theirs. But perhaps we could focus on the work itself. Oh, come on, Gary. Joy laughed, but there was an edge to it. You can't have it both ways. You want to make political statements, but then hide behind your art when someone challenges you on them. I'm not hiding behind anything. Oldman's voice remained steady, but those who knew him well could detect the slight tightening around his eyes. I simply believe there's a time and place for political discourse, and a promotional interview for a film isn't typically one of them. Joy leaned back in her chair, clearly enjoying herself. But that's exactly the problem with you Hollywood conservatives. You want to have your cake and eat it too. You make millions from an industry that's predominantly liberal, but then you turn around and bite the hand that feeds you. The audience murmured, some nodding in agreement with Joy, others clearly uncomfortable with the direction the interview was taking. Oldman took a deep breath, and anyone who had studied his performances could see him drawing on that same internal strength that had powered his most memorable characters. Joy, with respect, I think you're oversimplifying things, he said. I've never bitten any hand. I've worked with people across the political spectrum throughout my career, and I've always brought professionalism to every project. My personal beliefs have never interfered with my work. Really? Joy's voice rose slightly. Because I remember reading some pretty inflammatory comments you made about certain Democratic politicians. Comments that a lot of people found offensive. Whoopi finally stepped in, sensing the interview was spiraling out of control. Maybe we should talk about the actual movie, Gary. What drew you to this particular role? But Joy wasn't finished. No, Whoopi. This is important. Gary here wants to play the victim, but he's been pretty vocal about his disdain for progressive values. I think our audience deserves to hear him defend those positions." Oldman's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I'm not playing the victim, Joy. And I'm not here to defend anything except my right to have opinions, just like you do. The difference is, when I'm invited to discuss my professional work, I actually discuss my professional work." The dig was subtle but unmistakable. Joy's face flushed slightly, and several audience members actually gasped at the implied criticism of her interviewing style. "Excuse me?" Joy's voice took on that sharp tone that anyone who had watched The View knew meant trouble. "Are you suggesting I don't know how to do my job?" "I'm suggesting that perhaps we could return to the reason I was invited here today," Oldman replied, his British accent seeming to become more pronounced as his patience wore thin. Joy laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. "Oh, this is rich. The British actor is going to lecture the American talk show host about American politics and American television." The comment hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Even Sarah Haynes looked shocked at the blatantly xenophobic undertone of Joy's remark. Oldman's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture, a subtle straightening that anyone familiar with his work would recognize as the moment his characters typically stopped retreating and started fighting back. "My nationality has nothing to do with my ability to have informed opinions," he said quietly, but his voice carried clearly throughout the studio. "And it certainly doesn't disqualify me from expecting basic courtesy during an interview." Joy realized she had crossed a line, but rather than backing down, she doubled down. "Look, Gary, nobody's attacking your nationality. But let's be honest here. You live in a bubble. Most actors do. You make millions of dollars pretending to be other people. And somehow that qualifies you to lecture the rest of us about real-world issues." The irony was lost on no one. Here was Joy Behar, who had built her entire career on offering opinions about everything from foreign policy to fashion trends, criticizing an actor for having political views. Oldman smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. "That's an interesting perspective, Joy," Oldman said, that smile still playing at the corners of his mouth. "Especially coming from someone who built her career doing stand-up comedy, and now offers daily commentary on everything from international relations to medical advice. Tell me, what exactly qualifies you to lecture anyone about real-world issues?" The studio went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Joy's mouth opened slightly, clearly not expecting Oldman to turn her own argument back on her so directly. Even the cameramen seemed to freeze, unsure whether they should keep rolling or cut away. I have been doing this for decades," Joy stammered, her usual quick wit apparently deserting her. "I've interviewed presidents, world leaders, I've covered major news events. And I've portrayed presidents, world leaders, and been part of films that examine major historical events," Oldman replied smoothly. "I've spent months researching roles, working with historians, studying the complexities of human nature and political systems. But somehow my insights are invalid because I'm an actor, while yours are valid because you tell jokes and ask questions." Whoopi tried again to regain control. "Okay, let's all take a breath here. Gary, why don't you tell us about working with your co-star in this new film?" But Joy was having none of it. Her face was now noticeably red, and her voice had taken on that shrill quality that emerged when she felt cornered. "Don't you dare compare what I do to what you do. I deal with facts, with real issues that affect real people. You play dress-up for a living." The audience actually gasped, audibly this time. Several people could be heard murmuring, "Oh no, and that's too far." Even Sarah Haynes put her hand to her forehead, clearly embarrassed by her colleague's behavior. Oldman's smile disappeared entirely. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. "I see. So when you spread misinformation about vaccines, that's dealing with facts? When you make inflammatory comments about entire groups of people based on their political beliefs, that's helping real people? When you consistently interrupt guests and twist their words to fit your predetermined narrative, that's professional journalism?" Joy's eyes widened. She clearly hadn't expected him to come prepared with specific criticisms of her work. "I have never spread misinformation about vaccines. That's a complete lie." "Really?" Oldman leaned forward slightly, Because I seem to recall you questioning the safety of certain vaccines just last month, causing your own network to issue a clarification the next day. But perhaps my actor's brain misremembered that fact. The other co-hosts were now visibly uncomfortable. Sunny Hostin was staring down at her notes. Whoopi was gesturing frantically to someone off camera, and Sarah Haynes looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. But Joy was beyond caring about her colleagues' discomfort. "How dare you sit there and attack me?" she snapped. "I invite you on my show. I give you a platform to promote your little movie, and this is how you repay that courtesy." "Your show?" Oldman's eyebrows rose. "I wasn't aware you owned The View, Joy. And as for courtesy, I'm simply matching the level you established when you decided to ambush me with political attacks instead of discussing the work I came here to promote." "Nobody ambushed you," Joy shot back. "I asked legitimate questions about your public statements. If you can't handle that, maybe you should stick to scripts where other people write your words for you." The insult was so blatant that even some audience members booed. Oldman sat back in his chair, and anyone familiar with his filmography would have recognized the look that crossed his face. It was the same expression he wore in his most powerful dramatic moments, when his characters reached the point of no return. "You know what, Joy?" he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, but somehow carrying more weight than if he had shouted. "I've spent my entire career working with some of the most talented, professional, and respectful people in the entertainment industry. Directors, writers, fellow actors, even talk show hosts who understand the difference between spirited discussion and personal attack. I've been on hundreds of interviews, and I've never once walked out of one." Joy sensed where this was going and tried to interrupt. "Gary, let's just—" "But," Oldman continued, raising his voice just enough to talk over her, "I've also never been subjected to such unprofessional, disrespectful behavior from someone who claims to be a journalist. You invited me here under false pretenses. You've insulted my profession, my nationality, and my intelligence. You've made it clear that you have no interest in having an actual conversation." Whoopi was now frantically trying to signal the producers. "Gary, please, let's just reset this whole thing." "No, Whoopi," Oldman said, his eyes never leaving Joy's face. "There's no resetting this. Joy has shown exactly who she is, and I think your viewers deserve to see it too. This isn't journalism, it's not entertainment. It's just mean-spirited grandstanding designed to make her feel important at my expense." Joy's face had gone from red to almost purple. "You arrogant, self-righteous piece of—" "Joy," Whoopi snapped, finally losing her own composure. "That's enough." But Joy was beyond caring. "No, Whoopi. I'm tired of these Hollywood prima donnas thinking they can come on our show and disrespect us. He wants to dish it out but can't take it when someone fights back." Oldman laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Fights back? Joy, you started this fight. I came here to talk about a film, remember? You're the one who decided to make it personal. And now you're upset because I'm not just sitting here taking your abuse with a smile." "It's not abuse, it's accountability," Joy snapped back. "You people think you can say whatever you want and never face any consequences." "You people?" Oldman's voice was dangerously quiet now. "Exactly which people would those be, Joy?" Joy realized she was digging herself deeper but couldn't seem to stop. "Actors, celebrities, people who think their opinions matter more than everyone else's." "But your opinions matter more than mine?" Oldman asked. "You can attack me, my profession, my nationality, but if I respond with facts about your own professional conduct, that's crossing a line?" Sarah Haynes finally found her voice. "Maybe we should go to commercial." "No," Joy said sharply. "I want to finish this. Gary, you came on this show with an attitude from the moment you sat down." The lie was so blatant that several audience members actually laughed out loud. The cameras had captured everything from the moment Oldman walked out, smiling and gracious, to Joy's first political ambush question. Oldman shook his head slowly. "Joy, every single person in this studio, everyone watching at home, they can see exactly what happened here. They watched you attack me unprovoked. They heard you insult my profession and my nationality. They saw you lose control when I simply defended myself with the same directness you showed me. And now you're trying to rewrite history in real time." "I'm not rewriting anything," Joy protested, but her voice lacked conviction now. Really? Then let's review, shall we? Oldman's theatrical training was evident as he began to recap the conversation with perfect recall. I came here to discuss my film. You immediately pivoted to attacking my political views. I politely tried to redirect to the film. You escalated by claiming I was hiding behind my art. I explained my position respectfully. You then accused me of biting the hand that feeds me, implied I was ungrateful, and made xenophobic comments about my nationality. Each point landed like a hammer blow. Joy tried several times to interrupt, but Oldman's voice carried over hers with the projection and timing of someone trained for the stage. When I simply asked to return to the reason I was invited, you mocked my profession, called it playing dress-up, and suggested I was unqualified to have opinions because I'm an actor. All while you, a comedian-turned-talk show host, claimed exclusive authority to discuss real-world issues. Joy's face was now a mask of barely controlled rage. She knew she was losing this battle badly, but her ego wouldn't let her back down. You think you're so smart with your fancy accent and your Oscar, don't you? Well, let me tell you something, Gary Oldman. I've been in this business longer than you've been in America, and I don't need some foreign actor telling me how to do my job. The xenophobic comment was so blatant this time that even the producers could be seen frantically gesturing from behind the cameras. Whoopi looked mortified. Sarah Haynes actually put her head in her hands, and Sunny Hostin was shaking her head in disbelief. Oldman stood up slowly, his movement deliberate and controlled. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of decades of professional dignity. And there it is, ladies and gentlemen. When Joy Behar runs out of actual arguments, she falls back on xenophobia, foreign actor. As if my place of birth somehow disqualifies me from having a conversation with her. Sit down, Gary, Joy demanded, her voice shrill now. I'm not finished with you. Oh, but you are finished, Joy, Oldman replied, remaining standing. You're absolutely finished. Not just with me, but professionally. Because everyone watching this can see exactly what kind of person you really are when someone doesn't simply nod along with your attacks. Joy shot up from her own chair, her face contorted with fury. How dare you threaten me? Security. Get this man out of here. The absurdity of calling security on a guest who was calmly standing by his chair while she screamed at him wasn't lost on anyone in the studio. Several audience members were now openly laughing at the spectacle Joy was making of herself. I'm not threatening you, Joy, Oldman said calmly. I'm simply observing that you've revealed your true character on national television. The xenophobia, the professional jealousy, the complete inability to engage in civil discourse, it's all been captured on camera. Whoopi finally found her voice and some authority. Okay, that's enough from both of you. Gary, please sit down. Joy, you sit down too. We're going to commercial right now. But Joy was beyond reason now. No, I want him gone. This is my show, and I don't have to put up with this disrespect. Your show again? Oldman laughed genuinely for the first time since the interview began. Joy, this delusion that you own The View explains so much about your behavior. But just so we're clear, you're one of several co-hosts on a show owned by ABC, which is owned by Disney. You don't own anything here except the embarrassment you've created for yourself. Get out! Get out right now! Joy was now pointing dramatically toward the exit, her hand shaking with rage. Oldman looked around the studio calmly, taking in the horrified expressions of the other co-hosts, the fascinated faces of the audience, and the scrambling producers. You know what, Joy? I think I will leave. Not because you're ordering me to, but because I have too much respect for your colleagues and this audience to participate in this circus any longer. He began unhooking his microphone with practiced ease. Whoopi, Sarah, Sunny. It's been a pleasure meeting you all. I'm sorry your colleague decided to turn what should have been a pleasant conversation into a public meltdown. Joy was still standing, breathing heavily, looking like she might actually have a stroke. Don't you dare apologize for me. I don't need your fake British politeness. Oldman paused in removing his microphone and looked directly at her. Fake British politeness. You know, Joy, I've heard that phrase before. Usually from people who mistake basic human decency for weakness. The fact that you consider courtesy fake says everything about you and nothing about me. He finished unhooking his microphone and placed it carefully on his chair. I came here today excited to talk about a film I'm passionate about, to share that passion with your audience. Instead, I got to witness a masterclass in how not to conduct an interview, how not to treat a guest, and how not to behave as a professional adult. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Oldman held up his hand. I'm not finished. You want to attack my politics? Fine. You want to question my qualifications? Go ahead. But when you resort to xenophobia, when you mock an entire profession, when you make it personal and ugly, you lose any claim to moral authority. The studio was dead silent, except for Joy's heavy breathing. Even the audience seemed to be holding their collective breath. You know what the real tragedy is here, Joy? Oldman continued, his voice softer now but somehow more powerful. You had the opportunity to have an interesting conversation with someone who's worked with some of the greatest directors and actors of the past 4 decades. You could have asked about craft, about the industry, about the stories behind the stories. Instead, you chose to try to score cheap political points, and when that backfired, you revealed the petty, small-minded person you really are. Joy finally found her voice again, but it came out as little more than a croak. Just leave. Please. Just leave. Oldman nodded. I will. But before I go, I want to say something to your audience. He looked directly into the main camera, his years of film experience evident in how naturally he found the lens. To everyone watching at home, this is what happens when ideology trumps professionalism, when ego matters more than courtesy. Don't let anyone tell you that this was a normal interview gone wrong. You saw what happened. You can judge for yourselves. He turned back to the panel. Whoopee. I hope we can work together someday under better circumstances. Sarah, Sonny, you both tried to keep things civil, and I appreciate that. Joy. He paused, looking at her with something that might have been pity. I hope you get whatever help you need. End of das. Joy. End of chapter I. With that, Gary Oldman walked calmly toward the exit, his dignity intact, while Joy Behar stood trembling with rage behind him. As he reached the edge of the stage, he turned back one last time. Oh, and Joy? The film opens nationwide next weekend. I hope your viewers will judge it on its merits rather than on your behavior today. The exit line was perfect, delivered with the timing of a master actor.